Alright, someone get legs all the way up Griffin on the line. The cold opener for this one featured some bad spelling and an insert a-hole celebrity joke here. And from there, just as Oriyashi said, Majorika had come looking for the Ojamajo after they had been out late. She managed to free them from their stony prisons, and in a nice subtle display of character growth, she didn't yell at the Ojamajo for messing up, and instead just focused on calming them down and getting their story straight. Sure enough, they came to the correct conclusion that the thief was back to his old ways. Later in the behold though, we got a good scene of Doremi understandably blaming herself for falling into Oriyashi's trap, but just as understandably, her friends assured her that it wasn't her fault. Yeah, normally this phrase would kind of trigger me, especially in Precure, but in those cases, I'd argue the protagonist had little reason to believe in the villain's obvious deceptions. Meanwhile here, creepy pervert or not, Oyashi was their ally throughout the bad card arc, so they had no reason to distrust him, or even really see him as a threat, because as far as they knew, he was still just that voyeuristic lapdog toad. Sure, Doremi could blame her gluttony for losing sight of the big picture, so she was culpable in that sense, but not so much that complete fault could be placed on just her. Regardless, it did make this dramatic scene feel earned no matter what perception you took. Aiko, could you just stop being best girl for at least 2 minutes? With some renewed vigor, thanks to having their eardrums ruptured, the Ojamajo immediately decided to fight fire with fire and set up their own trap. Of course, first they would need some bait. Geez, even the show itself can't underplay the creep factor anymore. But yeah, said FBI listee was at least trying to keep his hostage entertained. Ooh, Hana's in for a rude awakening when she grows up and realizes that the shows she enjoyed as a kid had maybe just a little too many dirty jokes. However, just as quickly, he lost focus when he realized his favorite radio show was on, which yes, for you kids these days, that's the equivalent of a podcast from our days. But yeah, he didn't question how Ompu would even be in the mood to do a radio show after what he did to them, much less be motivated to hold a mini concert the next day. Well, sorry Ompu, but you can't invite James Bond to your concert, as they already killed him off. There, I saved you almost 3 hours of your life. Nah, of course, it was all part of their trap, as they knew Oyashi's card number. They also purposely made it so that anyone with the same 3 ending digits could attend, so that there would at least be a small crowd to prevent him from using magic in the open. Honestly, a rather clever plan, other than Oyashi not questioning anything, but to be fair, that's pretty much in character with him. At the concert, the wizard thief did at least try to keep a low profile by yeah, honestly that was just so weird that I didn't even question him not seeing through the Ojamajo's obvious disguises until Aiko accidentally let it slip that she knew who Hana was. But yeah, the plan ended up failing for some pre-contrived reasons. Yeah, can we do a retake of that earlier scene? Yeah, they better do something awesome and meat worry to make up for that or... Okay, good enough. And regardless, the Ojamajo were forced to admit that they were way off their league in terms of power scale, especially when it came to casting times. I really like this, as it does acknowledge that their little stock animations do take up real time, and thus against an opponent with practically no cast time, they simply couldn't win from a practical standpoint. Fortunately, some actually useful royalty, god they're so rare in magical girl anime these days, arrived to help. After having her vassal confirm the wizard world's plans, which included Gigi also doing all of this just to receive a cheap title, the witch queen was going to take care of everything. Which yeah, considering it's a queen versus a wannabe phantom thief, it was almost guaranteed to be a wash, and yet the Ojamajo weren't satisfied with that. Arguably, it wasn't the most practical choice they could have made, but it was what was important to them. And you know, it also just so happens to let them sell a few new toys, but that's just a little bonus, right? Also again, Majrika kind of stole the scene by supporting the Ojamajo's choice. An insane far cry from the grumpy old witch from the first season, so real kudos there. But yeah, the queen gave the Ojamajos a special promotion that I guess could be best described as her royal SPs, complete with some believable upgraded forms. I mean, usually I do complain about there being too much white on a costume, but there was just enough color breakup here with different shades of each of the Ojamajo's signature colors. I especially like their asymmetrical torsos that featured white and their colors. It's unique and again helps with the color breakup. And while I would say I like these equally as much as their previous forms, I do have to admit they do have a bit more of a powered up feel to them, so at least they accomplished their job. Then of course they got the aforementioned product placement, but as I always say, as long as they serve a significant purpose in their show, I don't mind them. And in this case, the Reapers were a significant power-up that used shinier seeds that I'm guessing are worth like $1 trillion in the witch's world, and could be reused to cast magical stage-level spells for the Ojamajo individually, which is just kind of insane. More importantly though, they had almost no casting time as shown through one of the fastest stock animations I've ever seen in a magical girl anime, as they didn't even need to verbally say what they wanted and just needed to think it. In this case, Doremi created an arrow guide like something out of an open world video game. And yet, the writing gear is still infinitely better than anything from the latest Saints Row. It led to Oyashi's suite, where the real danger of the episode wasn't coming from him, but rather the very hungry god baby and her overly well animated Baba. Fortunately, Hazuki managed to one-shot in an impressive display of their new powers. In fact, this whole climax was a visual showcase for this anime, with some brief but nice looking key animation. With that, and after just tanking Oyashi's petrification spell, the Ojamajo quickly defeated Oyashi in quote-unquote battle by tickling him.
Frequency rising!
And the episode ended with the Ojamajo taking back Hana, and Oyashi forced to retreat to avoid having his DNA tickled. While this was a blatant advert for what would become the show's next line of toys, they did their job more than adequately, especially when it came to making them look good. This was wisely done by having the more experienced wizard curb stomp them in their first two encounters, only for them to have one of the most impressive comebacks ever. As a result, it led to a lot of good drama and a very satisfying conclusion to a two-parter that had a lot going on. As I've said, I enjoy shows that manage to densely pack their stories into well-paced episodes, which this two-parter did very well. They kind of cleverly did this by splitting up most of the new world building in the first part, and then most of the character stuff in the second part. As a result, for this episode, it put a lot more focus on the Ojamajo, in particular Doremi, and her dedication to taking care of Hana that she had built up over the course of the season. Her volunteering to save her child was a particularly strong showing of her courage, as while the queen probably could have easily resolved the situation for them, Doremi knew she had to take responsibility for her choices. That said, her friends and Majorika weren't slacking in the character department. Aiko gave them the big push they needed, Ompu came up with an effective plan that I hope didn't leave any of those other fans disappointed, and Majorika just plain out became the team mom of this group. Hazuki unfortunately didn't get much other than popping that giant bottle, but whatever, there was already a lot going on. Key among them was showing off their new powers, which when they established that they were magical stage leveled, they needed to make them look good, which they certainly did, with some of the best animation in this show so far, to really hammer home how these little witches are advancing in their magic studies, especially as they have to deal with some actual antagonists. Said baddies were also a little more fleshed out, between Gigi showing off his greedy desires, or Oyashi at least showing that he's an accommodating kidnapper when he's not being a cheapskate. But yeah, overall, this was an episode that managed to balance out the right amounts of drama, action, and commercialism without taking too much away from the other, making for a well-paced and very enjoyable watch. If the only objectionable criticism I notice is some bad spelling, then these little witches must be doing something right. You know, it's kind of appropriate that we reviewed this old show the same week we reviewed a new show and praised it for very similar things. Do check it out, as well as the show it's attached to, as I do think it's off to a great start. To give you even more perspective, be sure to also check out the overview of what came immediately before with Delicious Party coming soon. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and hold on. Hello? Ah yes, is my suite at the Hilton ready? Well, I mean I have to go to the bakery to pick it up.